Hi, Cheryl.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, I'm fine. I had a few problems getting on. I don't think I've got Zoom on my laptop. I have it on my desktop back home.
Oh, and
a
where
while.
are you? Where are you exactly?
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow,
11 a.m. The sun is out, 70 degrees.
nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you skiing? Do you ski out
No,
there?
no. This isn't skiing country.
Oh, okay.
If you go about a 2.5-hour drive north, it is skiing country.
Okay.
Arizona is a very unusual state. It has a low southwestern part, which is the desert, and a high northeastern part, which is about 1.5 miles up.
Wow.
And today it's snowing really hard up there on the high country, as they call it.
Yeah,
And
so it's a very diverse area.
Yeah, between the two is an area of cliffs and canyons, which is exposed red rock and is absolutely fabulous. And it's called the Mogollon Rim, or Mogollon, they call it. And of course, in the high plateau in the north is the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
So there are several spectacular events.
Absolutely.
And yeah, no, it's a slightly odd place to get used to, because we live 1 mile from an Indian reservation, which is the Pima. One of the bands of the Pima Indians has a reservation which is now completely swallowed by the urban area here, which is called the Salt River Reservation. And there are 17 reservations around the state, the biggest of which is bigger than Wales.
Goodness me.
And that's the Navajo Reservation in the northeast corner, which has the smaller Hopi Indian Reservation inside it. But down here in the southwest, it's big cities. The two big cities, Phoenix, which is about 4 million, and then 2 hours south is Tucson.
Yeah.
And another hour south is the Mexican border.
Wow. So how long have you been going out there? How long have you been there?
We've had the place since 2000.
Wow, long time.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, no, indeed. And but we've been coming out here for even longer. I first went to Arizona back in 1964 when I was a student working in Chicago.
Is that why you bought there? Because you loved it? You fell in love with it?
Well, yes, absolutely. We love the desert, and it's a great escape during the winter, because you can you can be pretty well sure that we're going to get about 1.5 hours more daylight than you do in the UK. And
it will be the shortest day next week, though. We will be going back up again.
Well, yes, but very
when are you
slowly.
going to come back? When are you going to come back?
We're coming back in time for the banquet, in case it's still happening. Yes, I know.
I've got my toes crossed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
so
we booked to come back about 5 days before the banquet, and then we'll be coming out again for the Easter time for another 1.5 months, which is the best time of all, because it's not too hot.
Yeah.
But this desert spring starts and everything bursts into color.
Oh wow!
You know, the trees go bright gold and the cactuses go pink.
Goodness me.
Oh, it's and the air is balmy, you know.
Yeah.
I think the strangest thing to get used to is the daily temperature swing. It
Right.
swings about 30 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 centigrade every day between day and night.
Good grief.
And that's because it's basically clear sky desert.
Yeah.
So most
there's
of the
nothing
temperature,
holding the air in. There's nothing
holding the warmth in. No.
Yeah.
And the desert sky at night is like a huge cold radiator of -200 or 300 degrees centigrade, shining down at you. And which is one of the reasons people feel so cold. The air temperature may be quite warm, but the radiation effect is extreme.
Gosh,
and
could be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing out there, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, so I mean, in the summer, when it gets extremely hot and it might be 80 or 90 degrees at night, it's still cold enough to need a sweater if you're dining outside at a restaurant because of the sky.
Yeah.
You know, which is sucking heat out of you.
Yeah.
So the walls may be all throbbing with the day's stored solar heat, but the sky is a great big fridge.
Absolutely.
And,
goodness
and
me.
then the opposite happens in the daytime, that even when it's cold and it's sometimes under 60 degrees for a maximum, you can still fry an egg on your carbonic because the sun is so strong that the metal heats right up. You can't touch it.
Wow, what an amazing place.
It is a very odd climate.
Yeah, very strange. Couldn't get more different, really, could you?
You couldn't. No, I mean, we have a sort of maritime climate where the one thing everybody wants to know is what's the temperature. Whereas here, it's all about the radiation.
Yeah.
And the air temperature is a byproduct with a lag on it, you know.
Yeah.
So, but people who go out golfing in the early morning wear everything they've got.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to lunchtime,
finished.
they're down to their t-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you were missed last week. It was a shame you weren't there. But Audrey's here. I'm going to let Audrey in. And then, so I've got your presentation here in front of me. But if you want to test the screen share, just do that.
Yeah,
let's do that. Yeah, because then you'll have full control.
Screen.
Yeah, you'll have full control then, won't you?
Yeah. I've pressed shared screen, so I'll now open my presentation. Are you seeing that?
Not yet, no.
Have you got anything there?
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it at the moment, but
okay, well, I'll go out again and do screen share.
Yeah.
I'll just I had the thing minimized, so I've got shared screen here, but it's not necessarily. It says not responding. Microsoft Edge.
Good old Microsoft.
Yeah. So now
Audrey's taking a while to join as well. I don't know.
Choose what to share. Entire screen. That's it's not showing me the share button. It seems to be asleep. It's pale, you know, and I've got a whole series of images, so I'm going to have to exit that. And we've now got you and me aside. Share screen.
Audrey's here as well, but she's not got her video on, so we can't see.
Okay. So I don't know why it's not sharing the screen, because I've
now let me try sharing mine.
Okay.
And then I'll I'm just gonna,
because it would work reasonably well for me to be just saying next slide to you.
Yeah, so let's just, now you're sharing my screen, I'm just going to.
Yeah. Well, I thought the first slide could be used just as a sort of joining slides so that people can be aware of it. So you're on number 2 at the moment.
Right. I hope you can hear me. Hello, Cheryl. Good evening.
Hi
Richard.
there. Hi.
Hi there, Audrey.
Hi,
yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Right. Okay.
Slideshow. Why is it not going to slideshow?
We're just having a technical debugging session here.
Just don't know why.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
Resume. It was working perfectly a minute ago.
Yeah, well, perhaps you can go down to slideshow down at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I've been pressing.
Okay. Well, there's the word slideshow up there. Yes.
Yeah. What? Resume slideshow. Okay, hang on a minute. Let me do something else. Couple more minutes. I saved it here as well.
Okay.
Let's see. There we go. Now, just want to make it full screen. There we go. So if I just come away from that, and then if I want to just go through the slides, I can just go like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably where we're better to do, because I can't seem to share.
I think so. So let me just view the waiting room, and I'm going to take the waiting room. I'm just going to admit them.
Yeah.
I'm going to start admitting people, Richard. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
We keep it all. I mean, you've probably been to one of these. We keep it all pretty casual. So you do your presentation. I'll be here to flick through, and I'll mute myself.
Yeah.
And then we'll just have a Q&A. Okay, so I'll start admitting everyone, and thank you very much for doing this. So
no worries.
Have a good talk.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, Master.
Hi, Richard.
How are you?
I'm very well. And you?
Yes, thank you.
And where are you? Where are you?
Scottsdale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is science fiction, isn't it?
It is. It's wonderful.
5,200 miles, and I'm on 33.5 west and 112 west and 33.5 north.
Fantastic. Are you staying there for Christmas?
Oh yeah, we have lots of friends out here, and we've been out for Christmas now for many years.
Good. Well, you're missing all our wonderful government's U-turns and shenanigans.
Oh yeah. They make the papers here occasionally, but out here there is a glorious. Well, in Arizona, you wouldn't know there was a problem. This state has one of the highest death rates. Nobody wears a mask. There's no control on anything.
Good Lord.
I know. 1 in 300 Arizonans has died.
1 in 300?
Yeah, that's the statistic they use rather than per 100,000 or anything else like that. But the overall American death rate is about the same as the overall British death rate, which is again, surprising. But I think it's highly localized, you know, that the underprivileged and the Native Americans have a very high death rate. And the white middle class are living largely outdoors in a relatively low risk environment. You know, no public transport and all that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just going to speak for a second.
Yeah.
The reason you're not seeing Richard is that I'm using my screen, everyone. And
I see.
I don't want to tamper with anything because at the moment it's working. So I'm just not fiddling with it. But that's why Richard's behind his screen and you can't see him. But better that than.
No, I could see him.
Yeah, I can see him.
Good.
I can see him.
Oh, it's just me that can't. I was just explaining it in case you wondered why we.
Okay.
Well, anyway, we have 9 people here, Richard. So I've taken the waiting room off, so people will just join as and when. So do feel free to start whenever you want.
Yeah, well, I think I will because obviously you never know quite how many people are going to arrive, and everybody can see it afterwards on the recording if they miss it. So good morning, everyone. And we'll have the next slide, please, Cheryl. No. No, there we go. Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you from 112 degrees west, 33.5 degrees north, which is Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's 11 o'clock in the morning. The sun is out. It's going to be about 70 degrees Fahrenheit today. And I basically want to share with you what I've learned from helping clients to get value out of BIM. BIM now stands for Better Information Management, not for Building Information Modeling. This is a term that is now seen as far too limiting in what people understand by it, and far too much bias towards design. So next one. Yeah, the agenda is what you see on the screen. Basically, by helping clients, which is what I focus on, we help architects too. Whatever you thought BIM was, please pause that thought now, because things have changed a lot and you really need to re-gear your ideas. So I'm basically going to redefine it for you. Next, please. Information management is what the international standard calls it. There's no B on the front. It's just the management of information in the context of the built environment. And essentially, it's a way of working. And the keys to it are that information should be structured and shared. By structured, we mean that all the information that you handle is machine readable by having strict naming convention of collecting elements of the building into object models, and also the way you present your information is described as containers, whether it's a drawing or a model or a document. Each of those is a container of information. And what it's all about is to try to provide the information that the customer and the team need at every point where they make a decision, during the project life cycle and later into the building whole life cycle. Now there's an international standard for it now, ISO 19650, which succeeds the British PAS 1192 series and has been adopted by the world. And basically it's a UK definition, although the PAS has changed its language somewhat in order to be more translatable into other languages. And it's still very arcane standard speak, which is one of the reasons that I have some work out of this, because it does need a lot of guidance. There is excellent guidance, which happens to be free, which is on a website called the UK BIM Framework. And I recommend that you look at that, even if you don't stretch to buying the actual standards themselves. Next, please, Cheryl. So information management by digital means, it can be quite transformative. The computer helps to make everyone far better informed and thus able to make better decisions. It can ensure that the information is accurate and complete, taking out a lot of the risk and supporting collaboration. As I say on the screen there, one of the reasons we have so many disputes in our industry is that the information is faulty. And being able to know that the information is complete and accurate is one of the things that is comes out of better information management. Next, please. Now, this is a very architectural diagram. A lot of the early work on BIM was done by the American practice HOK and its chairman, Patrick Mclamey. And way back in the early 2000s, he came up with this diagram, which is known as the Mclamey Curve. The stages of the project are shown divided by the dotted lines, and they're given their American names. But essentially, it's fairly obvious that what they are. Stage 3 is design development, the DD. Stage 4 is when production documents are made. Now, the two curving lines, the long curving lines, number 1 and number 2, represent, first of all, the ability to impact cost and functional capabilities, how you can change usefully during the design process. And curve number 2 represents the cost of making changes. So the cost of making changes rises continuously as the project progresses, and the value of doing so falls continuously. So Mclamey basically said, look, the sooner we can get to a firm design that everybody agrees to and that is not susceptible to changes by the client, the stakeholders, or the team members, the more value we shall get, because we should be able to make a better design and spend the least amount doing so. And you will notice that the RIBA Plan of Work 2020 has effectively done this. It said, move the majority of your design decisions into stages 2 and 3, so that by the time you reach stage 4, you are not susceptible to changes by anybody other than through the tendering process. So you have the maximum quality in the design for the minimum cost risk. Next. Now, the picture of the City of London is deliberate because one of my clients at the moment is the city in doing that. They have decided that they're going to be BIM based, and they're rolling out a policy through all their projects so that eventually they will have their entire estate digitized so as to have a portfolio with better portfolio management techniques, better performance, lower cost, and an improved delivery process. Now, essentially, that's what a lot of clients are gradually seeing in this process, that they can, by using digital processes, get a much better process, get stakeholders better looked after, get faster construction process, and in use over the life cycle, reduced costs and increased performance. So we'll have a look at each of those elements next. Thanks, Cheryl. Well, one of the things that's come on enormously in the last few years is what is labeled reality capture, and that is the use of lasers to scan, or photogrammetry to scan the world that exists, whether it's an existing building or a site, and you can do it cheaply and quickly by all sorts of devices, static scanners or flying drones, or even your camera in your pocket. And you can also import a huge amount of information about a site from geographical information systems. You can find out about traffic, flood risk, climate at the site, all sorts of things. So you can start with a digital site information package. So you know exactly where you are, exactly the size of everything, and exactly the surface state of everything. You don't know what's inside it yet, but you're starting with a digital site information. Next. And then there's analysis. We do a lot of analysis based on the CAD model now, but we're moving even further. Some people are starting to use what's called generative design, which is where the computer suggests tens of thousands of ways of using the site and scores them against the criteria that you've given it. This particular example is at Wembley, for the site that's being developed by Quintain. And that's one of the first examples of using that. But we're also analyzing cost, carbon, safety, bio, wellness, all sorts of things can be analyzed in a model. And we can also design for manufacture and assembly. All of these processes are information intensive. Next. And one of the things that is emerging quite clearly is that brief making doesn't need to stop at lists of requirements. It can actually include models of things that the client knows work and wants to reuse. And this is a classic example that we did for Pocket Living, the developer of small but beautifully proportioned homes. They wanted to be able to give their brief to architects and to contractors in a way that they couldn't mess up. Every single thing has to be exactly in the right place, from the PowerPoints to the pipe work for the heating. And it tended to wander about if it was just briefed on paper. This way you actually import the interior without any construction details, so you can build it any way you like. And you can import the entire information that goes with the unit. And this is what's happening in other building types, with hotels in particular, and with hospitals. Hospitals have up to 4,000 rooms, 90% of which are standard rooms of one kind or another, with a lot of data attached to those standard rooms. It used to be called a room data sheet. Now it's a briefing model that contains all the data that relates to that space. So you're often running very much faster than you would have been. Next one. Stakeholder engagement. Basically, one of the key advantages of information management is that it enables you to visualize almost anything. And you can take people with you on this. You can, obviously people have drawn perspectives for a long time, but we're now talking about interactive 3D experiences, which can either be individual on virtual reality, or they can be group in what's called a BIM cave, where you and your client and other team members can be in a space with a projected version of the model, and you can move around or move it around as you wish to see how things are relating to each other, to see what spaces that are being created, to sort out problems of coordination. And all this enables good decisions to be made and for them to be final in a way that they tended not to be when you were dealing with ambiguous analog information. Next. And of course, the planning authorities are not left out of this. City of London has an intricate model, not these fuzzy images which come from the View City website, but a really intricate model of the city that enables them to put any new proposal into context and look at its impact and where you can see it from, and how it's going to affect daylight and wind and all the other things that are important. And obviously the city now want proposals to be made to them in a BIM form. Next. And then moving on to construction. Modern methods of construction, which is a catch-all term basically means moving towards manufacturing and automation. And there's all sorts of things that contractors can do now with information in a digital form. They can set the building out directly from the model. They can fabricate bits and pieces from model instructions so that there's absolutely no chance that they won't fit. And they can use on-site robotics. And this is a particularly interesting one. This is a device that Schindler produced that climbs up and down concrete lift shafts once they've been cast and drills the thousands of holes that are required to fit a lift into a shaft. And it does so from the model, and it does so perfectly. So they're compared to the human process, it's safer, quicker, can operate 24 hours a day if need be. And the other very important safety feature of models is that you can plan the day's work with safety briefings for the work teams, using the model to show the sequence of work and to tackle and discuss any issues about who does what and what sequence we're all going to do it in. So next. And the feedback from that is interesting now. Instead of just doing it and hoping for the best, which is what happens these days with no clerk of works, you can have a clerk of works back, but at this time a robotic one, scanning the site on a daily basis to make sure that you know what's been done and whether it's been done right is extremely valuable. The contractor knows whether they have problems to deal with the following day, whether they're on schedule. This is a particularly spectacular way of doing it, which is a robotic dog from Boston Dynamics known as Spot. And he's shown here working for Foster Associates on the site at Battersea Power Station, trialing the scanning device. What that does is the scanner feeds data to an analytical tool which looks at the model and the work sequence planned for the day in question and compares what the Spot is seeing with what was supposed to have happened, and then produces a report for first thing the following morning so that you can find out whether you have issues to catch up or to redo any work that you had. Next one. And then when the building is finished, of course, as a project, it may be that the design team and the construction team's interest starts to wane, but the building has just started the rest of its life, which is where all this digital information really becomes important. And this is in fact where the largest savings are made in terms of improving the performance of the building, improving the service that the building gives, and enabling it to be altered and updated progressively through its life in a safe and effective manner. And we're moving progressively towards the building becoming aware of itself through adding sensors. And the concept of the digital twin is probably where information management is moving next. Next slide. And this is our very own first British example of a commercial building which has a digital twin, which means that it has not only an information model of itself as built, but that model is linked to the real building detail by detail, system by system, product by product, to say, how's it working? What's its performance? What's our energy consumption looking like? Which rooms are being used and how many people are in them? And are they comfortable? And what are the occupants asking for in terms of maintenance or sandwiches for lunch or any of the other things that enable the landlord and the tenants to interact? This is Great Portland Estates, and it's in Islington, it's in Whitechapel. And it's by DSDHA, and it's a mixture of new and existing building fabric. And it is a very modest looking object, but it's incredibly clever. And it's using information over the life cycle to increase the quality of the built environment for the occupier in a way that I think we shall find increasingly called for. So next one, please. Moving on to how do architects help their clients to get into this if they don't currently realize what it could do. The first thing is, I think, that you have to realize it's not for everyone. This is a sophisticated process, and it mainly pays back to the kind of client who is a repeater client, who keeps and manages and occupies the building over an extended period and looks after it. There are other one-off projects where one might say, well, it's sufficiently challenging project to be put into this protocol, but otherwise it is essentially for the established clients, whether they be public or private sector. Next. But an awful lot of clients who know about this thing in general don't know about it in particular. And the question is, how do you help them? How do you equip the client to actually play their role? Because it's not passive. You can't just say, oh, yes, I want BIM. In fact, that's what an awful lot of clients used to do. The question coming back was, well, what exactly do you want out of BIM? To which the answer was, I don't know, you tell me. This is what usually happens, and it's called brief making. And so the first thing you have to realize in working with information management with a client is that the client needs to equip themselves so that they can play their own role in preparing to do projects and helping to inform the team, instructing the team. And you can see a list of things there which we will look at. Next. It's about brief making, as I said, and the classic brief making is, what do we want the design to achieve? And that is, I'm showing here in a breakdown known as problem seeking, where you look at each element in function, form, timing, and economy, and you move from goals, the broadest possible statements, across the chart to needs, which are the actual specifics that you decided after consulting everyone that are required, the precise functions, the desired form, the timing, and the budget. Now, we now need to add another column, which is information. Next. The information brief. Now, I apologize in advance that there's a lot of jargon on this, because that's the way to get the notes into the boxes, but I'll explain the jargon to some degree as we go. The information brief also has goals, facts, policies, and needs, and it also has functionality, form and format, timing, and economy. And all these things control the information about the information required for design. So it's meta information, if you like, that controls how everything will be produced and how everything will be seen and how everything will be processed. And you can go through this later when you've understood what all these jargon phrases mean and all the number references, but they're the numbers in the BIM framework diagram to which we will now turn. Next. In ISO 19652, the process is assumed to be one with three swim lanes, if you like. There's the client, who is referred to as the appointing party. There is the leader of the supply side team, whether that be a designer or a contractor or both at different stages, and they are known as the lead appointed party. And then there are all the sub-consultants and sub-contractors who are appointed parties under the leadership of the lead appointed party. And essentially, this chart has a series of steps. Could I suggest that you all put yourselves on mute? There's somebody who is having a coughing fit out there. We can talk to each other afterwards. So next one now. The important thing to concentrate on in helping the client is the front end stuff that the client needs to have done before they instruct anyone. And this is the thing that is usually not done, because at the moment there isn't a wide awareness among clients or designers or contractors that you have to start by preparing, and preparing with the end in mind. And we're talking particularly about who should do what is the pattern of responsibilities, the organizational and asset information requirements, which are jargon phrases, but they mean what does the client need in the way of decision support information during the project, and what do they need in terms of information about the manageable asset when they finish, and what standards and procedures are going to be applied, and what is the common data environment. I'll come back to that. And the setting up of an information protocol, and I'll come back to that as well. So next. The key thing is the common data environment. One of the reasons that information management works is that people don't have their own version of the information. They all have a common version of the information, which is held in a server and is referred to as the common data environment. And it has built-in quality assurance systems so that the work that anybody is doing, any design professional, any specialist contractor, is work in progress until they offer it up to be shared with the lead appointed party to say, is this okay? Can we show it to the client? It then moves into the shared area where everybody can look at it. You can sort out coordination issues, and you then move it to the client to say, this is what we're proposing. If the client then accepts it, it's published as the information that everybody is now working from, and becomes the base position. And every step in this is archived so that you can see the audit trail, you can see who decided what and when they did, and what previous versions there were of everything, because you never know when that might be required. The common data environment is a rentable service online that you can get from a number of suppliers, and these follow the rules of ISO 19650 if they're to perform. We did discover that quite a lot of public sector authorities use SharePoint, the Microsoft document sharing system, and are reluctant to spend money, about $1,000 a month these things cost, on an additional CDE. Well, it's not the end of the world, because you can upgrade SharePoint to do most of the things that a common data environment is expected to do. Next. And then probably the most difficult thing for clients to get their heads around, and that is that when you're appointing people, you need to give them a legal basis for the right to use the information collectively. There are still a number of insurance companies, professional indemnity insurers and contractors insurance, who don't understand BIM and think that it's a risk to use any information that you haven't generated yourself. So collaboration is out because it's risky. Well, of course, the exact opposite is true. The information protocol is the legal attachment to your appointment or your contract, which says what your rights and responsibilities are in relation to intellectual property, gives you the particulars of the project, and is attached as a built-in part of your standard contract. JCT contracts have a guide as to how to add the BIM protocol to your appointment or your contract. But there are an enormous number of projects being done that don't have one. Next. Now, a lot of these regular clients who we are regarding as the most BIM ready do actually already use framework agreements, meaning that they gather the consultants or contractors that they prefer to use into a group and pick from them when starting a project. And a framework agreement enables them to keep this group of people lined up with policies and getting feedback from each other, learning, and becoming higher performers. One of the best things you can do with BIM, in fact, is to work with a framework agreement team of people who have worked together before, or at least have been in a framework group where they have been asked to share feedback and learning and improve their use of BIM. David Mosey, Professor David Mosey, whose picture is there, is the guy who devised the latest framework agreement form of contract, FAC1, which the government has decided is going to be their standard. Next. The government has also decided on how it's going to run public sector contracts for the foreseeable future, to be value focused rather than cost driven, which I'm sure we shall all be very pleased to hear, but skeptical about whether they'll actually manage to change the mindset of everybody involved. But the construction playbook, which came out almost exactly a year ago, mandates the use of information management to ISO 19650 as the standard way in which public projects should be procured. It starts from central government, so it won't automatically appear everywhere in the public sector immediately, but that's the pressure, and that's the way the world is moving. So finally, we have the conclusion that information management is now very mature and powerful. It's highly advantageous for appropriate clients, but clients and some consultants do need hand-holding to get through the fog of new jargon, new procedures, new routines, and return on investment. All of those things, there is a consultancy opportunity in this hand-holding, and that's what I'm making my living on at the moment. All these slides are going to be available to you afterwards, so I hope you haven't been spending your time scribbling notes too hard. And it's also going to be recorded on the YouTube channel for availability later to members of the company. But I'll be very happy to take questions. So Cheryl, if you can take the slides down and put up the faces of everybody who's here. We can talk to each other if you unmute yourselves and stick your hands up. Does anybody want to start the bowling?
I'll start then, Richard. Thanks for that.
Hi, Nigel.
Very interesting. Hi, hope you're well. You're the Mclamey Curve, which you were showing. I thought it makes very good sense. What stops us from front loading all of that information is our glorious, in the UK anyway, our glorious planning system, where of course our clients are unwilling to put too much, to spend too much up until the point they've got planning, because it's too risky, and they want to wait until they get planning, and then all the funds are released, and then everyone's happy and they're happy to do whatever it takes. But quite often it's just, particularly in residential buildings, it's slightly different. You made a point about different clients and different ways they view life. So clients with a longer term interest in the asset will take a different view, but certainly in the sort of cut and thrust of the residential sector, for the majority of it, and some others, they're unwilling to. So I think this is a bit of a difficulty for us, because it causes difficulty in using modern methods of construction, where we need to be front loading the help from manufacturers, and it's difficult to do that. And as you very clearly said, we also need to be getting better quality design information into these stages, because frankly, it's too late sometimes to do it later on. But I don't know, have you come across any good, sensible suggestions for how we get over this issue and persuading clients that actually they should be investing more upfront when they're the sort of clients that really only interested in getting a good consent?
Well, yes, and I mean, you're absolutely right. And one might say that the present Tory proposals for changing the planning system so that you have a presumption of permission in some areas, which look as though they're going to crash and burn, by the way. That was one of the things that it was aimed at, was to give the development community more confidence to put forward proposals, knowing that they were consistent with the local plan. Of course, a lot of developers make their fortunes by not being consistent with the local plan and achieving overdevelopment by doing so. But you're absolutely right that there is an inhibition there in a portion of client land who, as a result, partly disqualify themselves from being able to use modern methods of construction or to make the most of information management. I mean, those who won't appoint an engineer till they got planning permission. I remember one where we were working on a hospital with a contractor lead, and he wouldn't appoint engineers, and the local authority gave permission limiting the volume of the building, and it was then discovered that the M&E volumes required were effectively going to add another story to the whole thing. And so back we went to reapply for planning later at enormous cost to the developer, because they had to do all sorts of things, including finding ways for the columns to wriggle their way through the floor plates without going down through the middle of rooms. It is extraordinary how many clients think that short-term risk management is a worthwhile buy, but they do, because they live from day to day and bonus to bonus.
Yeah, well, I think that's it.
You know, and this is why pre-qualifying the client is something that I think one has to realize, that you can only sell so much against the inhibitions of the system. And there are highly suitable clients out there. Let's just take build to rent, for example, who are essentially institutional viewers of the long term, and they will try again on these things rather than shortchange themselves. But yeah, very good points. Thanks. Who's next?
Can I ask a question, Richard, about
Certainly,
the digital,
certainly, Chris.
the digital twin?
Yeah.
Presumably every consultant, including as-built, is inputted into the digital twin, and all the information about light fitting, ironmongery, etc. It sounds like an enormous undertaking. Is there any guidance for how you cost that sort of work?
Well, of course not, because it's new. But it isn't as enormous an undertaking as you might think, because there are actually several maturity stages in digital twins. The simplest definition of a digital twin is one where the information about the building exists as well as the building exists. In other words, there's no link between the real item and the information other than the human beings who look at them both. So an asset information model is a low-level digital twin. And as you know, you can transfer all the information from your asset information model into facilities management software automatically if you know what you're doing. And that's what COBE was supposed to be all about, so that the model contents could be transferred in a virtually labor-free way to the facility manager. Then adding the sensors to the building. I mean, there are lots of buildings which are smart in the sense that they have sensors and analytics all over them. But this information is not connected to the design model. It provides quite a bit of payback without doing so, but that's another low-level digital twin. To actually make the two work together is the clever bit. And there's two levels of that. One of them is just to have a dashboard that says, here's what's going on in your air conditioning equipment. Is everything working okay? Does it need attention? And then the next level of sophistication is that you can control it. You can actually make adjustments in real time to a fan that might be overspeeding or a lift that's not leveling properly, that you can actually control it without having to send a little man with a bag to fix it on site. And that level of control is leading edge right now. And then beyond the leading edge, where a lot of people think it's going to go is where the building automatically looks after an awful lot of low-level corrections and adjustments so that the temperature never goes out of whack. You don't bother to service a room that isn't occupied. All that kind of thing that at the moment needs human management. So it's a series of steps, and those people who sell this stuff are at the beginning of trying to price it and offer it in a way that is commercially sensible. But the most sensible way, in fact, is to offer it as a service. Not to say it's something you purchase, but something you get as a service, rather like the common data environment, where you pay a monthly for things to be done to the standard that you wish. And if they are, then you pay, and if they're not, then you don't. And servitization, as it's called, is actually going to be a factor in the world of digital twins. I might say, and you will know this from your infrastructure work, that infrastructure clients are the ones who are keenest on this. So they can actually tell what's going on in the railway system and how all the points are set and how all the signals are working and how all the trains are running. So they can actually see it as a live system and make judgments about how to manage it. Now I see I've got hands up from the master, who is on mute. Phil, if you unmute yourself, you can talk to me.
Yeah, okay, Richard. I find all this absolutely fascinating and interesting, but it seems to me that its application is more useful in larger scale commercial or institutional projects, coming from the very traditional baked mud of house building industry. And having specialized in one-off projects on recycled land in conservation areas, etc., I can't see how that world is going to plug in to take advantage of the great advantages that you're talking about here. For instance, the larger house builders, in my experience, were very much attuned to the ideas that you're talking about here with information management. But what it really boiled down to was dumbing down the product. So for instance, you get Pete Seeger little boxes. The guys that bought my business knew once they got to damp-proof course how many nuts and bolts and bricks and how long it was going to take. And it was a very streamlined process. They also paid their subcontractors on the nail. So they always had subcontractors that they worked with, working with them. So it sort of did what you're talking about in the house building industry. But the quality of the product from the point of view of planning and the quality of the environment, etc., was in a way compromised. So I'm interested to know whether you think this does have application in the house building industry.
I think the build to rent part of the house building industry very much fits the bill, partly because it's long-term owned asset. So you have a real risk for quality whereas we know the mass house builders produce rubbish. And there's parliamentary committees saying, why are houses so terrible, and why do purchasers have no recourse? Because they don't, because previous governments have basically said, you buy at your risk. Whereas an institutionally funded build-to-rent dwelling unit is continuously looked after by somebody backed by your pension. And it's quite a different proposition. They need quality through and through, and they need to monitor and adjust the real thing through its life and make sure not only are the occupiers happy, but that the dishwashers are working. All those things that are can be done through information management. So you notice I didn't put house builders on the list of likely clients. But I think house building for sale is in decline. This is another discussion that we might have. House building to rent is on the increase. Yeah. And partly the availability of site labor is going to push this. The availability of deposits to buy is going to push this. You know, if you can't afford to enter the housing ladder until you are at pensionable age, you can forget about it. Yes, now I've got Nicholas Waring next.
Ah, yes. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Myself.
Yeah, I can indeed.
Richard, thank you very much for that. Without preamble and such, I'll just ask the question. Does this have value for the Temple Bar Trust, do you think? I can imagine that, well, not imagine, I would understand that digital twin is an essential part of the refurbishment of the Palace of Westminster, for instance.
It certainly is.
And I'm interested to hear that the City of London itself is, in essence, got the city digitized, and what one might consider the city itself is generating its own digital twin. I just wonder if, coming back to Philip's point really of idealism and value for money, do you think it would have any value for the Temple Bar Trust, for instance, to adopt this attitude to post-construction FM future for Temple Bar?
I think it would be a boutique exercise. It would be an intellectual lollipop, if you like. It could be done as a demonstration, if you like, of to capture the building in a model form, and then to operate it in this sort of environment would be a kind of a jewel to hang to one's watch, you know, something really small but perfect, but it wouldn't have any return on investment other than intellectual. I think we are talking about a particular kind of client for whom this kind of thing is really useful. And even then, they'll be in a hierarchy. You're right about the Palace of Westminster. That is going to be a highly sophisticated facility management job. But one of the things that is underlies all this is the gap which has always existed between design and construction and the occupation of buildings. Facility management is a relatively recent expertise. There is no common body of knowledge. There is no degree you can take in it. You fall into it from a vast variety of starting points. Those who design and build buildings are essentially completely unaware of it and cut off from it, with one or two exceptions where a contractor offers facility management services as part of their business. But designers in particular are simply not aware of it. They get no feedback from it. They don't know what works and what doesn't. They find out shock horror that a highly rated BREEAM building turns out to be a gas guzzler. Because the people running it have no idea how to run it, or because the design was totally naive in real world terms and they didn't know that. They never get that feedback because there is no continuity or connection. And one of the things we're moving towards with digital twinning is that it will be a whole life cycle. The whole life cycle is something which appears in the architectural mags with increasing frequency. what does it mean for us as professionals is gradually emerging as to how we will fit into a new landscape of information. Next one up is Audrey, and then back to Nigel. Audrey.
Thank you very much, Richard. This is fascinating for me. I've used information modeling in my work in heavy infrastructure, but over the last few months, I've been drawn into roundtables looking at information modeling and management for housing, just as a contributor. And I was taken aback to find that when it comes to managing the houses, which are, as you say, built for rent, the asset managers have absolutely no idea about building and how a building is put together. And they are just literally drawn from the street, and they're given these jobs to do. And one of the examples which I was given was turning up to maintain, say, a fire damper or even a fire resisting door, which has been shown on the information modeling documentation, but broken down into so many aspects that they have no idea which parts of the assembly to look at. So yes, so your talk, Richard, is extremely important and is very thought-provoking because there's a real issue here. And at one of the meetings, one of the owners of these housing units said, well, he didn't know anything about it. And I pointed out that if it's not written into the contract, by the time with design and build that the house or whatever housing unit is being handed over, the architects who did the information modeling have long left the scene, and they have they have no obligation to come back. And so really with the information modeling, I find that there's a gap, as you've pointed out, between when it's used at the time of the development of the whole project and when it's needed, when it has now fallen into the lap of the asset managers. And if they, on one of these meetings, they printed out a whole reams of paper just on a fire door, and they had no idea which part of the fire door to tackle. And mind you, as soon as you tackle one side or one element of the fire door, it no longer becomes a fire door. So there are real issues where they're finding out that some of these buildings do not actually meet their requirements. And
yes. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And of course, the upcoming building safety bill is effectively saying we can't have this. There has to be a continuous line of information right through design, build, and occupy. Yes. And your fire door needs to be in the model with all the information about how to look after it attached to the model, or alternatively accessible. You know, the fire door has a code which is stuck to the door, and you can just scan it and just say, okay, here's all the information. We just scanned it on my phone, so I can find out whose door it is and how you look after it directly without having to go into a model. One way or the other, it's the same information management challenge, but there has to be continuity. And that's what's going to become the law, particularly for high risk residential. But I think it's gradually going to become the norm.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, well, Nigel, you're got another one.
Okay, well, I was just going to make a point when Phil was talking about will house builders be interested, that we've sort of got to a point, I think, in Hawkins Brown anyway, and I'm sure this is true for most large practices, that we use Revit predominantly, and we use it pretty much ubiquitously, whether or not the client wants it, because it suits us. So at the beginning of the project, we'll always consider whether it's effectively what we call light touch, so not really level 2 BIM, but we're just doing it for ourselves, or whether it's going to be something where we have to provide COBE data at the end and therefore have a more rigorous BIM protocol. So I think, you know, what you're talking about is not really using it as a sort of a way of producing information, but but as a way of using that information for further purposes, you know, for FM and so on, isn't it? And the wider opportunities. But I was just going to make the point that as the software becomes more prevalent, I think, you know, people are just using it because it's a convenient way of drawing, and we don't do CAD anymore. So
that's
it's
it.
just a different factor.
That's it. And if you like, these are levels of use which are perfectly self-justified in the design world and in the contracting world, but they don't necessarily have a client-oriented dimension or a use cycle or orientation. And to get what the client can really use out of it, you need the client to join the game. And if, God forbid, we have a problem down the road with the thing that's been designed, we need to have everybody knowing where they stand. And if the client hasn't appointed you with a proper protocol, he's up the creek in a new way, you know. So that there are risks being run by people not using what they could use for reasons of, if you like, laziness, either the client's failure to engage or the architect's failure to persuade the client to engage. You never know when that might turn out to be an issue. But I absolutely understand that you can use Revit as a drawing tool and as a coordination tool for engineering into architecture very, very usefully and justifiably, and then hand over a bunch of PDFs to the contractor who has no understanding or ability to work with anything else. And equally, if he does, then his subcontractors are still paper-based, and so on. And we've still got to persuade the product manufacturers to provide us with digital information about their products in a standardized way. And I think it's taken 10 years to get to a point where we have an idea of what that template of information might be, so that your fire door can actually be something that you can pull down the data from in a way that is standardized and machine readable and totally consistent, and meets all of those things. So you know the provenance, you know the carbon content, you know all those things that you now want to know, which you never wanted to know before. Yeah, well, I think we've done quite well. We've got right round the 1 hour, and some very good questions. Thank you very much. And you can see all the slides and all the complexities on the slides when Cheryl sends them around to you. But otherwise, thank you all for coming, and I hope you found it useful.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
thank you, Richard. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thank you,
Richard.
Good. Well, as a PDF, Cheryl, not as PowerPoint, because first of all, it would break their machines. It's so big.
I'll probably send the recording of tonight, and then it has everything in
it does.
Discussion as well.
Okay, and I shall now go out into the sunshine.
Have a good Christmas.
Thank you very much.
And all of you. Very Merry
stay safe.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Cheers.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye.
Adios.
Thank you. Bye.